I wanted
Of the $800 billion in stimulus funds, $240 billion of which was tax cuts, not spending, by the way. Isn't it true that Amtrak was allocated $1.1 billion? So we're talking about $1.1 billion, not $800 billion?
I think it was 1.4, 1.3.
$1.3 billion. And the total cost of and that was basically Congress instructed you to spend that on projects that were ready to go as fast as possible, infrastructure projects. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you spent it on what in broad terms?
Niantic River Bridge and some additional infrastructure projects.
Some infrastructure bridges and so forth, which I assume, had you not spent it on those, there would have been safety problems?
Yes.
Okay. So the basic, okay, thank you. Now, Amtrak has requested $36.4 million to implement PTC in fiscal year 2016. Now, does this go beyond finishing the implementation of PTC by the end of this calendar year?
Yes. This is off the Northeast Corridor. This isn't on the spine of the corridor. The spine of the corridor will be done by the end of December, but we have other work that we need to get done.
Okay. And could Amtrak have implemented PTC sooner if it had more federal funds?
Had they come a while ago, yes, but not now.
No, but if Amtrak had more federal funds a year, 2, 3, 4 years ago, it could have implemented.
When we first started, if we'd had a dependable amount of money to move forward, yes.
Okay. Now, to switch topics for a moment, the tunnels into New York have been described as ticking time bombs because of damage from salt water during Hurricane Sandy. What's the status of those tunnels? What would happen if they were to go out of service, and how much funding is necessary to prevent that from happening?
Well, we found out this winter what would happen if they went out of service because we had so much ice that we had regular ice patrols that had to knock down the ice in one of the tubes or one of the other tubes. And when that happened, you went from being able to move 24 trains an hour down to 6 trains an hour. So we got a lot of complaints from New Jersey Transit and from Amtrak riders that they had to wait outside one of the tubes in order to get into New York City. So that's exactly what
Now, going from 24 trains an hour to 6 trains an hour as the only rail access into New York City from New Jersey would have a significant effect on the economy?
Absolutely.
Can you quantify that at all?
I will for you. I'll get back to you with that answer.
Please. And now I understand that Amtrak has a $21 billion backlog of projects on the Northeast Corridor just to achieve a state of good repair. Is that accurate?
That's what the Commission developed and produced, yes.
Do you have any source of funding for that $21 billion?
No more so than what we get each year.
And how much is in the budget that the House just passed?
1.39 was what we had last year, and I think...
No, but that's for total. That's not just for projects on the NEC.
No, not for just the projects in the
NEC. So of the $21 billion necessary to get up to a state of good repair in the Northeast Corridor, how much was appropriated for that purpose or available for that purpose from the amount of funds voted by the House a couple of weeks ago?
There were some dollars that were specifically identified for advancing our gateway system, but not capital dollars for us to actually build it.
No capital dollars at all. Okay, so 0 over 21. That's a pretty good ratio. Now, we have heard that, Ms. Feinberg, we have heard that Amtrak will have the PTC, positive train control, in place by the end of the year, at least on the spine, a little later elsewhere. But what's the status of PTC implementation on other passenger rail lines like Metro North and Long Island Railroad in New York and other commuter rails? And what will it take for commuter lines such as those in the New York area to meet the deadline?
They're struggling. They're very much struggling to meet the deadline. We just completed a loan to the MTA for almost $1 billion to assist with their PTC implementation. That is not to reach the deadline. That will go beyond the deadline. But
and do we have any estimate as to when the commuter rails across the country are likely to be able to implement PTC?
It varies dramatically, but I would say anywhere from 16 to 18 to 20.
In other words, a year to 2 to 4 years after the deadline, and we know the possible safety repercussions. Let me just say that the Transportation Appropriations Bill on the floor this week includes no money for commuter lines such as Metro North and the LIRR to install PTC. Amtrak funds this out of federal capital grants, which were just cut by $290 million. Despite the fact that there's a $21 billion backlog to achieve a state of good repair in the NEC, we spend about $50 billion on highways and about $16 billion on $17 billion on aviation and $1.2 billion on rail. There's something very wrong with the appropriations process, and for us to sit here and not understand that the fact that Congress has been starving Amtrak has a large role to play in what we're talking about is putting our heads in the sand. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Nadler. Mr. Costello.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me start with Ms. Feinberg, and I want to thank you for